The Savage Hawkman #6, written by Tony S. Daniel and James Bonney, art by Philip Tan. We left off last issue with Hawkman fighting against a bunch of apparitions, spirits, whatever, and coming across the Gentleman Ghost, who is like, hey, I'm the villain of this arc. So this issue opens up on a recap page that basically just tells us everything that we've been going to up to this point with his visions of the dead and whatnot. And we pick up here with him talking to Gentleman Ghost, and Gentleman Ghost is like, hey, by the way, this was all my plan to have you here. I invited you here. Here's what I need. I need you to go find the Mortis Orb for me, because I'm like 90% sure that your nth metal has some very special properties that are going to interact with it. And Savage Hawkman's like, you don't know anything about nth metal. I don't even know anything about nth metal. He's like, right, sure, whatever. Totally don't know anything about nth metal. But yeah, it's going to react weird, so I need you to go do that for me. And they fight for a little bit, and Hawkman, of course, can't land any hits at all because the spirits are just incorporeal, but they can hurt him because of whatever magic. And as he's getting pretty much torn apart, he grabs Digby, the guy who led him here in the first place, and just takes him. He's just like, all right, we're going, bye. And Gentleman Ghost is like, all right, have fun getting my orb. So he questions Digby for a little bit, just about more history of what this orb is. And apparently a man who was allegedly a warlock named Julius Gates had it. He died, and ever since then it's been missing. But he lived in a creepy old mansion just outside the city, so that's where they're going next. So Hawkman picks him up, drags him along, and they go to the mansion. We get a quick little glimpse of Emma showing up at Carter's apartment, but he's not there, obviously. The neighbor, Singh, meets her and is just like, hey, he's gone. He said he was going out to do something, and he saw something like monsters crashing through the windows, and I was like, all right, yeah, that's pretty much on par for how weird he is. Hey, if he shows back up, could you give me a call? It'd mean a lot. And he's like, cool, what's your number? And that's exactly where that plot leaves off. So then we go back to the mansion bit. They arrive. It's completely run down. It doesn't look like anyone is there. But as it turns out, Julius's widow is actually still alive and is still living in the house. And they're like, are you good? You've just been living in this house? And it's just like, she mistakenly thinks that Hawkman is Julius for whatever reason. But she's like, oh, no, never mind. You're not my Julius. You know, he comes and visits me sometimes. And it's like, oh, yeah, because he's dead, and that's kind of the thing that's been going on in this arc. Tell me, do you know what the Mortis Orb is? And she's like, yeah, no, he's buried with it. He's literally, he talked about it all the time. And so at that point, they're like, all right, well, where's your husband buried? And it's like, oh, he's out in the cemetery, not too far from here. And they're like, wow, this is incredibly easy. So they get up and they go to the cemetery. Digby has it pulled up GPS on his phone, and they find the grave of the person. And Digby's asking some questions about nth metal, and Hawkman's very defensive for some reason, but whatever. So as they're starting to digging up the grave, apparently it smells like sulfur in the graveyard, and as Hawkman touches the Mortis Orb, this unbelievable surge of power goes through him that he can feel in his bones. But of course, at that moment, zombies. The entire graveyard starts waking up. They all start plowing through their graves and start attacking Hawkman. And he starts lopping off heads, realizing that they're after the Mortis Orb, but he's not sure that he's actually doing anything because they keep on coming after him regardless. And of course, as he's starting to be overrun, Gentleman Ghost shows up, and he's like, hey, thanks for finding that orb for me. Took me a while to figure out that you could do it, but the power of the orb was rendered inert because of a spell by the warlock, but touching nth metal caused that to basically reset. So now it's at full power, and I can use it to get my body back, because again, I'm just a ghost. So thanks for that. Oh, and by the way, me getting my body back is basically going to kill every man, woman, and child in like several miles around me. So just letting you know that I'm super evil like that. So Hawkman immediately flies up, and he's like, all right, how bad is this? And he sees zombies in like all directions. And he makes his way to the Brooklyn Bridge, and he sees people running for their lives because, again, zombie invasion. And we see the final page is him standing over, like on one of the towers of the Brooklyn Bridge, And a reporter being like, it's being reported that the dead have come back to life. And Hawkman's like, this is kind of my fault. And that's where we leave off. It's a fine issue. I mean, it moved at a breakneck pace. We got like Gentleman Ghost explaining, here's exactly what I need from you. And Hawkman being like, I'm not going to do that. But then he does it. Like, to the point where there's one part where Digby says, oh, they've been searching for this stuff for like centuries and nobody's ever found it. And I'm like, dude, the old lady just said it as soon as someone asked. Did no one think to ever ask the old lady? Also, did he actually say centuries now that I'm thinking about it? Because that old lady is still alive. It was hidden for centuries. Never mind. Hidden until Julius Gates found it. Okay. The writing's not that far off. But regardless, like, it just seemed way too easy. And I think the point was that he wanted... Either he didn't know how many issues he had left and wanted to wrap this up on zombies, or he genuinely, like, thought, okay, we need to move this through quickly for whatever reason. Because the fact that they took a whole issue to just set up that he was having visions. And then they took this issue to not only deal with the first fight, deal with a second fight, deal with zombies coming back, deal with the introduction, the finding, and the taking of the Mortisword. Like, all of this combined, way too much for one issue. But I like it in terms of the fact of, it seems like a lightweight arc. It doesn't seem like this is going to have any sort of lasting impact on pretty much anything. So I don't mind that we're not spending too much time on it, if that makes any sense. So overall, I'm going to go ahead and give this one a 6. My primary complaint boils down to, once we start getting into like the zombie attacks and stuff like that, all the fight scenes pretty much just kind of feel murky and dark and blending together. I don't get any real sense of action outside of the sound lines of swoosh and smoosh chack. Like, everything else just kind of blends together of a general pile of limbs. But writing wise, it's just breakneck, so I'm okay with that for this particular arc. I would, if it was anything heavier, I would probably critique it more, but for something as simple as, and yeah, there's an orb that makes zombies, it's fine.